The stale scent of old parchment and the distant, tinny clang of an unseen automaton usually grated on Alistair Finch's nerves. But today, Diagon Alley was putting on a particularly aggressive show of normalcy. It was late afternoon, the sun casting long, playful shadows down the cobbled street, illuminating shop windows crammed with glittering Quidditch gear and shimmering robes. Tourists, easily identifiable by their wide, awestruck smiles and brightly colored I Love Hogsmeade scarves, clogged the thoroughfare, weaving past seasoned witches and wizards who navigated the crowds with the practiced indifference of city dwellers. Alistair hated it. He hated the forced cheer, the saccharine wonder, the way everyone pretended that the world wasn't teetering on the edge of another collapse. He just wanted to get his blasted sixth-year potions ingredients, duck into flourish and blots for his required reading, and apparate back to the dubious safety of his sparse Hogwarts dorm room. He kept his head down, shoulders hunched, a familiar shield against the world's relentless optimism. He'd grown up in a muggle orphanage where cynicism was a coping mechanism, not a flaw. Finding out he was a wizard hadn't transformed his worldview. If anything, it had deepened his distrust. The wizarding world, with its grand pronouncements and ancient traditions, felt just as hollow, just as fragile, as the muggle one. Especially now. Now, there was the Joker. The name alone sent a shiver down Alistair's spine, not of fear exactly, but of profound irritation. Another madman, another villain, but one who seemed to delight in exposing the rot, rather than just conquering it. And for all the Ministry's bluster, they were failing, spectacularly, to contain him. Alistair sidestepped a particularly boisterous group of Ravenclaw first years, their faces alight with the novelty of a mechanical dragon breathing harmless smoke from a nearby shop. He just wanted to get to the apothecary. The street was vibrant, almost painfully so. The pastel facade of Florian Fortescue's ice cream parlor glowed, a testament to enduring sweetness. Madame Malkin's robes for all occasions boasted a new line of self-ironing dress robes. Everywhere, there was color, sound, and a desperate, almost aggressive, joy. That's when it started. It wasn't a sudden explosion, or a loud bang. It was far more insidious. A subtle shift in the air, like a filter had been placed over reality. The colors of Diagon Alley, so vivid moments before, began to desaturate. The cheerful sky blue of the apothecary faded to a sickly gray blue. The vibrant green of the Daily Prophet stand bled into a muddy olive. It happened too slowly for immediate panic, too fast for conscious observation, like a dream shifting into a nightmare. A murmur rippled through the crowd. People paused, looking around, a frown creasing their brows. Did the light just dim? A witch nearby whispered to her companion. The sounds began to distort next. The pleasant chatter of the crowd, the jingle of bells from a passing ice cream cart, the distant boom from Weasley's wizard wheezes, all of it stretched, warped, like a faulty gramophone record. Voices became thin, reedy, then deep and guttural, then dissolved into a chaotic symphony of discordant whispers and choked gurgles. Alistair felt a prickle of dread, a familiar knot tightening in his stomach. He didn't need to see the calling card, didn't need the signature cackle. He knew. This was him. Then, the faces. Oh, the faces. He watched, horrified, as the confused expressions of the people around him began to morph. Their features elongated, their mouths stretching impossibly wide into rictus grins that bore no joy. Their eyes, once wide with bewilderment, became black, bottomless pits, reflecting nothing but a distorted, internal light. It was as if 1,000 grotesque masks had been slapped onto their unsuspecting faces, each one locked in a silent, mocking laugh. The cheerful music from the magical instrument shop across the street suddenly erupted into a cacophony of screeching violins and off-key trumpets, punctuated by a familiar, high-pitched, maniacal cackle that seemed to echo from every direction at once. It wasn't just coming from the shop. It was in the very air, in the stones of the alley, in the pounding of Alistair's own heart. Panic ignited, swift and brutal. People shrieked, but their screams were muted, twisted into alien bleats by the pervasive distortion. Wands flashed uselessly as terrified wizards tried to apparate, only to find themselves stuck, their attempts fizzling out like damp squibs. The ground beneath Alistair's feet felt like it was rippling, the cobbles turning slick and slimy as if oozing some unseen ichor. He saw a child, no older than 7, clutching her mother's hand. Her face, too, had been twisted into the awful, laughing mask, her small body trembling uncontrollably. Her mother, her own face a ghastly parody of terror, was trying to pull her away, but they seemed to be walking in place, unable to escape the illusion. This wasn't a curse designed to kill. It was designed to break. To show them, with exquisite cruelty, that their precious, ordered world was a joke. Alistair pressed himself against the cold, unyielding wall of a shuttered shop, forcing himself to breathe, to think. It's an illusion. It's not real. None of it is real. But the sheer immersive terror of it made the distinction meaningless. His own stomach churned, a bile rising in his throat. He felt the insidious tickle of the Joker's magic trying to seep into his own mind, whispering doubts, mocking his fear. He instinctively reached for his wand, a familiar weight in his hand, but what could he do? Cast a countercharm against collective madness? Against the very fabric of reality being unraveled? He'd studied defensive spells, hexes, charms, but this was beyond the curriculum. This was psychological warfare, played out on a grand, terrifying stage. Aurors, distinguishable by their dark, hastily donned robes, began to appear, pushing their way through the paralyzed crowds. Their faces were not immune to the Joker's spell. Their expressions, too, were stretched into horrific grins, though their actions spoke of grim determination. One, a burly man with a distinctive scar over his eye, tried to cast a finite incantatem at the epicenter of the chaos, the magical instrument shop. His spell connected, a beam of pure white light, but it only seemed to agitate the illusion. The building itself shuddered, then seemed to wink at him, its windows transforming into leering eyes, its door a gaping maw. The maniacal cackle intensified. Alistair watched the Auror's futile efforts, a grim sense of validation settling over his terror. See? He thought, a dark voice in his head. Told you. They can't do anything. Their magic, their ministry, it's all just a paper-thin facade. The prank reached its crescendo when, with a final, echoing burst of deranged laughter, the distorted faces of the crowd shimmered and began to slowly, sickeningly, melt away. The vibrant colors flickered back into existence, painfully bright after the monochrome horror. The cacophony of sound collapsed back into the familiar, if now utterly terrified, din of human screams and sobs. The illusion was gone, but the fear remained. It clung to the air like a noxious fog, heavy and suffocating. Diagon Alley was a mess. Shop windows were cracked, not by physical force, but by the sheer magical pressure of the illusion. Customers lay huddled on the ground, some openly weeping, others staring into space with vacant, traumatized eyes. The mechanical dragon from the novelty shop lay in pieces, its smoke now a mournful wisp. The scent of fear was palpable, mixing with the lingering, cloying sweetness that was now irrevocably associated with terror. Alistair pushed himself off the wall, his legs shaky. He scanned the street, taking in the devastation, the shattered sense of security. Aurors were now performing rudimentary diagnostic spells, trying to comfort the inconsolable, their own faces etched with a profound weariness. They looked lost, overwhelmed. Exactly what the Joker wanted. He saw the burly Auror with the scar, now pulling a weeping young woman to her feet. The Auror's uniform was rumpled, his face pale beneath the grime. Alistair started to turn away, eager to disappear into the anonymity of the crowd, to sever any connection to this fresh horror. He just wanted to go home, to hide, to pretend he hadn't seen the true face of the world today. But as he moved, his gaze snagged on something small, half buried beneath a shattered cauldron display. It was a single, iridescent feather, a rich purple that pulsed with a faint, unsettling glow. It looked almost out of place amidst the chaos, too beautiful, too deliberate. As Alistair stared at it, a shiver ran down his spine. This wasn't just a leftover, it felt like a marker, a sign. He felt a sudden, inexplicable urge to touch it, to understand it. But before he could take a step, he felt a gaze on him. He instinctively looked up, his eyes darting across the distraught faces, the hurried movements of the Aurors. His eyes locked with the scarred Auror, the very one who had tried to combat the illusion. The Auror was no longer comforting the woman. He was looking directly at Alistair, his expression unreadable. There was no accusation, no anger, just a quiet, piercing intensity that seemed to strip away Alistair's carefully constructed detachment. It was a look that said, "I see you. I saw how you watched. I saw that you didn't just panic." Alistair's breath hitched. The Auror's gaze lingered for only a fraction of a second before he turned away, his attention drawn to a colleague. But the damage was done. Alistair felt a cold dread settle in his gut, far worse than the fear the Joker's illusion had inspired. He had tried to be invisible, to be a ghost in the machine. But somehow, in the midst of the chaos, he had been seen. And in the world of the Joker, being seen meant drawing unwanted attention. The stench of ozone and burned sugar still clung to Alistair's robes, a phantom reminder of Diagon Alley. Back within the familiar, yet suddenly less comforting, walls of Hogwarts, he found himself jumpier, his cynicism hardening into a defensive shell. The other students talked in hushed, nervous tones about the Joker attack, some with grim fascination, others with terrified whispers. Alistair just wanted it to disappear, to dissolve into the background hum of magic and leave him to his studies. He wanted to be invisible. But the Joker, it seemed, wasn't done playing. It started subtly. In Transfiguration, a student attempting to turn a matchstick into a needle found it instead transform into a tiny, cackling puppet with an eerily familiar, wide grin. Professor McGonagall, usually unshakable, had blinked, an uncharacteristic frown creasing her brow before she swiftly corrected it with a sharp flick of her wand. "A minor misapplication of charm," she declared, her voice firm, but Alistair saw the flicker of unease in her eyes. Then came the potions classroom. During a particularly volatile lesson on drafts of living death, several ingredients in Alistair's cauldron and those of his neighbors swapped labels. Bezoar for belladonna, murtlap essence for moonseed extract. The resulting concoctions didn't explode or even kill, but instead emitted plumes of sickly sweet, brightly colored smoke that induced uncontrollable, hysterical laughter for several minutes. Alistair, gasping for air between choked guffaws, caught sight of Professor Slughorn looking utterly bewildered, his usually jovial face etched with genuine alarm. Everywhere, small, unsettling anomalies began to surface. Books in the library would rearrange themselves overnight, sometimes forming absurd patterns, sometimes displaying crudely drawn, mocking faces on their covers. Portraits in the corridors would occasionally whisper nonsensical riddles, or their painted inhabitants would briefly swap frames with a mischievous wink. It wasn't dangerous, not overtly, but it was relentless, chipping away at the school's venerable sense of order. Alistair tried to ignore it all, to write it off as the natural decay of a wizarding world he already suspected was built on shaky foundations. He hunched over his textbooks in obscure corners of the library, skipped meals in the Great Hall, and tried to melt into the shadows, a ghost in his own life. Just survive, he told himself. Keep your head down. It'll pass. But the chaos was too pervasive. One afternoon, during a particularly chaotic charms class, Alistair found himself struggling with a simple levitation charm. His feather, instead of rising gracefully, began to twitch and vibrate on the desk, then abruptly flew across the room, embedding itself in the enchanted ceiling with a soft thwip. He retrieved it, only to find a small, crudely drawn smiley face etched into its quill. He scowled, ripping the feather in half and throwing it into a nearby bin. "Problems, Finch," a sharp voice cut through his frustration. Alistair looked up to see Lyra Thorne, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, her Ravenclaw tie meticulously straight. She was standing by his desk, a look of focused annoyance on her face. Lyra was known for her exceptional intellect and her utter disdain for anything that wasn't logical or efficient. She viewed disruption as a personal affront. "Just the usual systemic incompetence," Alistair muttered, gesturing vaguely at the increasingly frantic attempts of other students to control their now dancing feathers. Nothing new. Lyra's gaze, however, wasn't on the dancing feathers. It was fixed on the mangled remains of his quill. That smiley face, she said, her voice devoid of inflection. I've seen it on the cover of a misinformation theory tome in the restricted section. And on a rogue piece of toast this morning. It's not a common symbol. Alistair shrugged. The Joker's branding, I suppose. He seems fond of childish scrawls. Childish, yes, Lyra agreed, but deliberately so. It's part of the psychological torment. To trivialize the attack, to make it seem less threatening, more ridiculous. But the underlying intent is disruption, the undermining of confidence. She paused, her brow furrowed in concentration. I've been mapping the incidents. They aren't random, Finch. Not quite. There's a pattern to the seemingly random, a deliberate non-pattern, if you will, designed to prevent effective countermeasures. Alistair sighed, scrubbing a hand over his face. So what? You're going to write an essay on the semiotics of magical chaos? Good luck with that. No, Finch. I'm going to solve it. And unlike most people here, you actually noticed the nuance of the Diagon Alley attack, didn't you? You weren't just horrified, you saw the layers. He bristled. I saw a madman making a mockery of everything. And I'd rather not see it again. Precisely. Which means you possess a certain, detached perspective. A cynicism that, for once, might be useful. While everyone else is busy trying to put things back to normal, you might actually see what normal isn't anymore. Lyra's eyes, usually cool and analytical, held a flicker of something almost like desperation. The library, Finch. My research for my ancient runes thesis has been completely sabotaged. Books whispering riddles, pages scrambling themselves when opened, entire sections rearranging into a giant, unreadable HHHA. This isn't just about fun and games. This is about making knowledge inaccessible. About creating chaos in the very foundations of our learning. Alistair felt a reluctant tug. The library was Lyra's sanctuary, her fortress of logic. To target that was a direct assault on her core beliefs, much like the Diagon Alley attack had shattered his fragile illusion of safety. He saw the same chilling intent behind the Hogwarts pranks as he had in the city. The Joker wasn't just a showman. He was a surgeon, meticulously dissecting institutions, exposing their soft underbellies. What do you propose? Alistair asked, against his better judgment. We observe. We record. We look for the true patterns beneath the manufactured chaos. He's leaving breadcrumbs, Alistair, I can feel it. He wants to be seen, to be understood. He just wants us to think he doesn't. Lyra's words were precise, cutting through the general panic and vague theories. They started small, after hours, working in hushed whispers. Lyra's mind was a steel trap, her notes meticulously detailed, mapping every strange occurrence, the exact location of a whispering portrait, the precise time a classroom's chalkboards changed from equations to nonsensical limericks. Alistair, despite his initial reluctance, found himself drawn into the detective work. His cynical eye, honed by years of distrust, was surprisingly good at spotting the absence of randomness, the subtle signatures that belied the Joker's claims of pure anarchy. Look, Alistair pointed out one night, hunched over a crude map of Hogwarts Lyra had drawn. The pranks seemed to cluster around areas of high stress or tradition. Potions before nude exams. Transfiguration before practice assessments. And now the library, during thesis season. Lyra's eyes widened slightly. You're right. He's preying on our anxieties, our pressure points. It's not just about disruption, it's about amplifying existing fears. Making us doubt our own abilities, our own intelligence. The realization sent a cold, not forming in Alistair's stomach. The Joker wasn't just attacking buildings, he was attacking minds. He was making wizarding society turn on itself, dissolving its collective confidence. This was far more insidious than Voldemort's blunt force. Their makeshift investigation grew more urgent as the pranks escalated. House Point hourglasses in the Great Hall started filling with glitter and rubber ducks instead of rubies and emeralds. The Sorting Hat, during a particularly fraught assembly, began to spout not house placements, but riddles that questioned the very nature of bravery, loyalty, wisdom, and ambition, each ending with a distorted, echoing laugh. The professors were clearly overwhelmed, their usual authority chipped away by the relentless, non-lethal, yet deeply unsettling attacks. Then came the prefect's feast. It was a special occasion, meant to boost morale and restore a sense of normalcy after weeks of mounting tension. The great hall was decorated lavishly, candles floating serenely, the enchanted ceiling displaying a calming, star-filled night sky. Alistair, dragged there by his head of house, sat silently, picking at his roast beef. Suddenly, the candles began to flicker erratically, casting dancing shadows that seemed to lengthen and distort. A low, guttural chuckle rumbled through the hall, not from the assembled students or staff, but seemingly from the very stones themselves. The enchanted ceiling rippled. The stars vanished, replaced by an increasingly distorted, kaleidoscopic image. It twisted and warped, colors bleeding into each other, until it solidified into a grotesque, grinning clown face, its eyes impossibly wide and manic. From its vast, stretched mouth, a booming, distorted laugh echoed, reverberating through their very bones. The laughter wasn't joyful. It was mocking, triumphant, and utterly, terrifyingly mad. Panic erupted. Students screamed, chairs scraped back, and professors leaped to their feet, wands drawn, though against what, they seemed unsure. Spells shot towards the ceiling, harmlessly dissipating against the powerful illusion. The clown face pulsed, growing larger, its laughter intensifying, each peal sending shivers of despair down Alistair's spine. Then, the house point hourglasses, now grotesquely stuffed with balloons and confetti, violently shattered, sending a shower of colored paper and broken glass across the high table. The confetti, however, didn't settle. It swirled, forming crude, dancing figures of students and professors, each caught in the thrall of the ceiling clown's mocking laughter, twisting into contorted, puppet-like shapes. Alistair watched, paralyzed, his mind flashing back to Diagon Alley, to the shattered illusions of safety. This wasn't just a prank. This was a direct, theatrical assault on the very heart of Hogwarts, on its authority, its traditions, its sense of sanctuary. The Joker was here, inside their walls, mocking them all, proving his point that chaos was inherent and order a delusion. Next to him, Lyra, pale but resolute, gripped her wand so tightly her knuckles were white. Her eyes were fixed on the terrifying tableau above, not with fear, but with a fierce, analytical intensity. "He's not just sowing chaos," she breathed, her voice barely audible above the cacophony. "He's making us see it, making us believe in it." Alistair finally tore his gaze from the ceiling. He looked around at the terrified faces of his peers, the bewildered expressions of the professors, and the raw, unadulterated madness echoing through the hallowed hall. The last vestiges of his desire to remain detached crumbled. He couldn't hide from this. No one could. "We have to stop him," Alistair said, his voice quiet but firm, a nascent determination hardening his features. "Before he breaks everything." Lyra nodded, her eyes meeting his. "I think," she said, her voice grim, "he's already shown us how close he is to succeeding. I've found something in the historical archives. A pattern of similar, but isolated, incidents from decades ago. I think this isn't the first time he's tried to play this game." The air in the Hogwarts library, usually a sanctuary of quiet erudition, felt charged with a different kind of tension now. It wasn't the pre-exam jitters or the hushed excitement of discovering a new spell, but the persistent hum of dread that had permeated every stone of the castle since the clock tower incident. Alistair sat opposite Lyra, a stack of ancient ministry reports between them, their spines cracked with age. Lyra, ever the picture of focused intensity, chewed on the end of her quill, her brow furrowed over a cryptic passage from a forgotten journal detailing peculiar magical disturbances during the Grindelwald era. "It's not just the what he does, Alistair," Lyra murmured, tracing a paragraph with her finger. "It's the how. These aren't dark arts rituals, they're performances. Each one designed to expose a weakness, sow a specific kind of discord." Alistair pushed his spectacles up his nose, rubbing his temples. The lingering chill from the clock tower's phantom chime still gave him goosebumps. Discord is easy to sow when the soil is already rotten. Look at these ministry reports from the 90s. Even after Voldemort, they were more concerned with image than genuine reform. He's just shining a spotlight on what everyone already knows. And that's precisely his brilliance, Lyra countered, meeting his gaze. He doesn't need to conjure a fiendfire to destroy a community. He just needs to make them distrust their healers, their protectors, their own judgment. That's a far more insidious form of destruction. A familiar, gentle voice broke their concentration. A rather bleak assessment, but not entirely inaccurate, Miss Thorne. Professor Alara Vance stood beside their table, her expression serene, but her eyes holding a deep, knowing concern. Her silver hair, usually pulled back in a neat bun, had a few stray strands escaping, giving her a subtly disheveled look that Alistair rarely saw. Professor, Alistair said, feeling a familiar twinge of self-consciousness. He never felt quite adequate under her discerning gaze. Mr. Finch, Miss Thorne, she began, her voice soft but firm. I've been observing your rather diligent, if clandestine, research. And I must say, your conclusions align with certain forebodings I've been experiencing. She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. I received an unusual message this morning. A riddle, delivered via a flock of enchanted paper doves, all bearing the distinctive purple and green sigil. Alistair felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. The Joker. Professor Vance nodded gravely. Indeed. It spoke of a grand unveiling, a celebration of truth, to be held at the Ministry of Magic this afternoon. A public spectacle. Lyra's eyes widened. He's targeting the Ministry directly? Not a peripheral institution, but the core of wizarding governance. It appears so, Vance confirmed. His prior attacks were designed to erode public trust from the periphery, Diagon Alley, Hogwarts. Now he's going for the jugular. He seeks to prove their very foundation is a house of cards. We have to go, Alistair said, the words surprising even himself. He hated being involved, yet the thought of sitting idly while the ministry crumbled felt wrong. Not heroic, just deeply, sickeningly wrong. Professor Vance studied him for a moment, a faint, approving smile touching her lips. I expected you might feel that way, Mr. Finch. You possess a deeper sense of responsibility than you often give yourself credit for. Come. We must be discreet and quick. Operating directly into the ministry atrium was impossible, so they took the flow network from Hogsmeade. The moment they stepped out of the Ministry of Magic visitors' entrance fireplace, a strange cacophony assailed their ears. The usually dignified atrium was anything but. Instead of the gentle burble of the Fountain of Magical Brethren, a harsh, discordant melody played, a twisted rendition of God Save the Queen on what sounded like a broken trombone. Paper flyers, shimmering with unsettlingly bright colors, fluttered down from the enchanted ceiling, depicting various ministry officials with exaggerated, clownish features, their eyes replaced by swirling spirals of green and purple. The usual busy throngs of ministry workers were replaced by clusters of bewildered, muttering individuals. Some pointed upwards, others clutched their heads, and a few were laughing a high, unnerving cackle that seemed to echo the deranged music. He's already started, Lyra whispered, her eyes darting around, analyzing the chaos. Look, the statue of magical brethren. Alistair looked. The golden figures, usually radiating benevolent magic, were now weeping viscous green slime from their eyes. The elf, the goblin, and the centaur had swapped places, their expressions frozen in grotesque grimaces, as if caught mid-argument. This is designed to overwhelm the senses, Professor Vance observed calmly, shielding Alistair and Lyra slightly with a subtle wave of her wand, making them blend into the confused crowd more effectively. To induce a state of sensory overload and panic, making logical thought difficult. Notice the colors. The greens and purples are particularly vibrant, almost assaulting the optic nerve. Alistair felt the pressure building in his own head. The music, the flyers, the weeping statues, it was all too much. He fought the urge to cover his ears, to simply apparate away. Then, a booming voice, amplified magically to reverberate off the polished marble walls, filled the atrium. It was the Joker. His voice, modulated and distorted, was laced with mirthless laughter. Good afternoon, esteemed members of the Ministry of Magic. And a special welcome to our visiting guests. You've arrived just in time for today's main event, the grand unmasking. Witness as we peel back the layers of polite society and reveal the true faces beneath. A spotlight, impossibly bright and colored in violent purples and greens, snapped onto the grand fireplace, usually reserved for senior officials. Out of it stepped a figure in a tailored, acid green suit and a wildly patterned purple waistcoat. It was the Minister for Magic, Bartholomew Crouch Jr., but not as Alistair knew him. The minister's face was painted with a wide, garish smile, his eyes rimmed with black, and his hair dyed a shocking shade of emerald. He held a giant, ridiculously oversized rubber chicken under one arm, occasionally squeezing it to produce a squawking sound. "My esteemed colleagues," the painted minister boomed, his voice unnervingly echoing the Joker's own. "Today, we confess. We admit. We are all clowns. Trapped in a circus of our own making. And our greatest trick? Convincing you we're in control." He let out a loud, maniacal cackle, which was mimicked by a chorus of unseen voices. Panic began to spread. People started shouting, some trying to flee, only to find the exits magically sealed or leading to endless, twisting corridors. Others simply collapsed onto the floor, clutching their heads, overwhelmed. He's used a powerful confundus charm, likely combined with a memory modification spell, Lyra deduced quickly, her mind cutting through the chaos. Not just on the minister, but subtly on the entire atmosphere of the atrium. The goal isn't just to make the minister look foolish, it's to force everyone to question what's real. And to question their own leaders, Professor Vance added, her gaze fixed on the painted minister. He's not just making a spectacle, he's making a statement. Your leaders are no different from me. They are just better at hiding their madness. Alistair watched, horrified, as the painted minister began to pull seemingly random ministry documents from his robes, reading them aloud with theatrical flair, twisting their meaning into absurd pronouncements or embarrassing confessions. He claimed the Department of Mysteries was actually a secret bingo hall, and that the Wisengamott's latest decree was simply a recipe for particularly potent fainting fancies. "How do we stop this?" Alistair asked, his voice tight. "He's making a mockery of everything." "Not by force, Mr. Finch," Professor Vance replied. "That's what he wants, a confrontation and escalation. He wants us to react with anger and violence, to prove his point that we are all just a hair's breadth from chaos. We must disrupt his narrative, not feed it." Lyra pointed to a series of small, shimmering orbs hovering near the ceiling, emitting faint, high-pitched frequencies. Those are the source of the acoustic distortion and probably the confundus-like effects. If we can disable them. And the projections, the colors, the false minister's voice, Alistair added, his mind beginning to work through the layers of the illusion. It's all woven together. One piece is reinforcing the next. Like a carefully constructed stage play. "Precisely," Vance affirmed, her eyes glinting with understanding. "Think of it as a symphony of discord. To stop it, you don't break the instruments, you change the conductor. Or, in this case, you silence the song." She handed Alistair a small, smooth stone, warm to the touch. "This is a resonance stone. It amplifies the true, underlying magical frequencies. The Joker's magic is loud, chaotic, but it's still magic. It has a signature. Lyra, your knowledge of spellcraft is invaluable here. Alistair, your ability to perceive the patterns, to see beyond the surface, is what we need." Alistair took the stone, feeling a faint pulse within it. "So, we're not fighting the illusion. We're fighting its source." More accurately, Professor Vance corrected, a subtle strength in her voice. "You are re-establishing the truth. The Joker manipulates perception. We must make people see again." It was a daunting task. The atrium was a vortex of sensory assault. But Alistair felt a spark of something ignite within him. Not courage, not yet, but a fierce stubbornness. He refused to let this maniac rewrite reality. "Lyra, the orbs," Alistair said, pointing. "Focus on disrupting their frequency. Vance, if you can help us stay invisible and shield us from the worst of the psychological effects, we might stand a chance." Professor Vance nodded, her wand subtly active, creating a pocket of relative calm around them. Lyra pulled out her own wand, her face a mask of determination. I need to understand the precise harmonic disruption. It'll be a complex countercharm. Alistair closed his eyes for a moment, the resonance stone clutched tight. He tried to tune out the cacophony, focusing on the underlying magical currents he could feel pulsating beneath the chaos. He sought the anchor, the core spell holding the entire twisted performance together. He felt the Joker's magic, a vast, sprawling web of enchantments, but at its heart, a single, powerful binding charm, amplifying the minister's altered persona. He opened his eyes. It's the minister himself, Alistair stated, a sudden clarity washing over him. He's the central conduit. The confundus, the sound, the visuals, they're all anchored to his altered state. If we break that, the whole structure collapses. A brilliant insight, Mr. Finch, Professor Vance praised, her voice barely audible over the din, but a direct countercurse on the minister would be too volatile. He is a living conduit. We need a more nuanced approach. What if we don't counter the charm on him? Lyra mused, a flicker of understanding in her eyes, but the perception of him. The Joker wants us to see a clown. What if we make them see the minister again, even if he's still enchanted? That's it, Alistair exclaimed. It's about belief. If enough people genuinely believe he's the minister, not a clown, the charm's effectiveness will diminish. He feeds on their despair and confusion. Professor Vance smiled, a genuine, warm smile that cut through the gloom. Excellent. A counter-narrative, not a counterspell. Alistair, use the resonance stone. It will help you project an image of truth. Lyra, focus your efforts not on disabling the orbs, but on creating a counter-frequency that clarifies perception rather than disrupts it. It was a desperate gambit. Alistair raised the resonance stone, feeling its warmth spread through his hand. He closed his eyes again, picturing the real Minister Crouch Jr., flawed but dignified, overwhelmed but still a leader. He focused on that image, on the truth of the man, and poured his own will into the stone, letting it amplify his intent. Lyra, meanwhile, worked feverishly, muttering complex incantations, her wand tracing intricate patterns in the air. A faint, silvery hum began to emanate from her, a delicate counterpoint to the raucous trombone. For a few agonizing moments, nothing happened. The Joker's voice still boomed, the painted minister still cackled. Alistair felt doubt creep in, the weight of the chaos pressing down on him. Was he just delusional? Was hope truly an illusion, as the Joker claimed? Then, a subtle shift. The vibrant, assaulting colors of the flyers seemed to dim, ever so slightly. The discordant music faltered, replaced by fleeting glimpses of the fountain's gentle burble. The cackling around them seemed to lose some of its manic edge. The painted minister, mid-tirade about the Department of Magical Games and Sports being a front for underground troll wrestling, paused. His painted smile wavered. A flicker of confusion crossed his eyes, momentarily piercing through the garish makeup. The crowd noticed. A few whispers started. Is that the minister? One witch murmured, her voice tinged with uncertainty. He looks so strange. The Joker's voice boomed again, angrier this time. Don't be fooled by cheap parlor tricks. This is the real face of your leadership. Fools. Clowns. But the spell was breaking. Alistair, fueled by a surge of defiance, pushed harder, projecting an image of steadfast dignity, of quiet resolve, into the atrium. Lyra's counter-frequency resonated, clearing the air, like a bell cutting through fog. The minister's painted smile cracked. The giant rubber chicken slipped from his grasp with a pathetic squeak. He looked around, disoriented, a profound confusion replacing the forced gaiety. The magic holding the atrium in thrall began to unravel. The flyers lost their color and drifted harmlessly to the floor. The golden statues ceased weeping green slime, their expressions returning to their original, benevolent forms. The warped music sputtered and died, replaced by the sound of gasping breaths and stunned silence. The ministry employees, no longer confounded, looked at the minister, then at each other, a collective wave of horror and embarrassment washing over them. The immediate disaster was averted. The minister, though still sporting a clownish face, was no longer a puppet. But the psychological damage was done. The memory of their minister, painted and cackling, revealing fabricated secrets, would linger. The Joker hadn't destroyed the building, but he had planted a seed of doubt and shame that would be far harder to uproot. Alistair looked at the now silent atrium, at the disoriented faces, and felt a hollow victory. He had helped stop the immediate spectacle, but the insidious message had sunk in. The wizarding world's leaders had been made into clowns, and everyone had seen it. "He wants to break their faith, Alistair," Professor Vance said softly, her hand resting on his shoulder. "He wants to prove that their institutions, their order, is merely a joke waiting to be told." This wasn't about the magic. It was about the message. Alistair nodded, the resonance stone still warm in his hand, but the warmth felt heavy now, burdened with a fresh, terrible understanding. He had seen the depths of societal manipulation, how easily a collective belief could be shattered, how quickly trust could turn to ridicule. The Ministry hadn't just been attacked, it had been humiliated. And the Joker had done it without casting a single offensive curse. He'd merely shown them a reflection they didn't want to see. He looked at Lyra, her chest heaving slightly, her face pale but resolute. They had succeeded, in a way. But the victory felt utterly meaningless against the backdrop of such profound, self-inflicted damage. The Joker wasn't after power, he was after their souls. And Alistair realized, with a chilling clarity, that this was only the beginning. He had to understand what made the Joker tick, what truly motivated this descent into madness, before the wizarding world completely lost its mind. The chill that had seeped into Alistair's bones at the Ministry wasn't merely the residual dampness of the underground, nor the lingering aura of panic. It was the stark, disquieting realization that the Joker wasn't just a showman. He was a surgeon, deftly carving away at the very foundations of belief, hope, and trust. The illusion of safety Alistair had always scoffed at now felt thinner than a spider's silk. But where before this would have reinforced his cynicism, a new, unsettling resolve was beginning to stir. He didn't want to just survive, he wanted to understand. "It's not enough to block his spells, Lyra," Alistair said, pacing the length of their secluded alcove in the Hogwarts library. Dust motes danced in the slivers of afternoon sun filtering through a high, leaded window. "We saw what he did at the Ministry. The fear wasn't about the flying desks or the levitating teacups. It was the absolute chaos, the public humiliation, the feeling that everything they believed in was a joke." Lyra, perched on a stack of forgotten tomes, consulted a meticulously organized scroll of notes. Her brow was furrowed in concentration, her quill scratching softly against parchment. "Agreed. Direct confrontation is futile if the psychological warfare remains unchecked. We need to understand his playbook, his targets, his preferred brand of despair. His victims," Alistair murmured, stopping abruptly. "Who are they? Not just the grand spectacles, but the smaller acts. The ones that don't make headlines, but chip away at people." Lyra's head snapped up, a spark of recognition in her sharp, gray eyes. "Excellent point, Finch. The Ministry only publicizes the big events, usually after they've botched the cleanup. But what about the quiet erosion? The incidents designed to break specific individuals or smaller communities?" Their research began, a grim archaeological dig into the forgotten corners of wizarding news and suppressed Ministry reports. Lyra's knack for unearthing obscure records and Alistair's intuitive grasp of hidden motives proved a potent combination. They spent hours poring over faded copies of the Daily Prophet from years past, cross-referencing with archived whispers from the Quibbler and even less reputable, gossipy pamphlets. They found them, the Joker's lesser-known victims. There was the famed potions mistress, renowned for her calming drafts and unwavering composure. The Joker had struck during a public lecture, not by attacking her, but by subtly altering her ingredients. Her calming draft, instead of soothing, had induced a fit of uncontrollable giggles in the entire audience, followed by a brief but vivid hallucination of sentient, dancing cauldrons. The potions mistress, mortified and unable to explain the unprecedented magical anomaly, retired in disgrace, her reputation for unflappability shattered. She'd become a living punchline. Then there was the illustrious family of cursebreakers, pillars of the community, famed for their unity. The Joker hadn't cursed them. Instead, during a charity gala, he had enchanted their private family photos displayed for auction. Each picture, when viewed, would whisper a petty, hurtful secret, an embarrassing childhood mishap, a minor act of sibling rivalry, a hidden debt. The whispers spread, amplified by the charms, turning their close-knit bond into a public spectacle of mistrust and resentment. The family, once a symbol of strength, dissolved into recrimination. Alistair felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach with each revelation. He doesn't destroy with curses, Lyra. He destroys with truth, or at least, a twisted reflection of it. He takes a crack, a flaw, a hidden fear, and he magnifies it until it consumes everything. Lyra nodded, her pen still. He preys on authenticity, on trust, on societal expectations. He targets the very things that make people feel safe and connected, then he turns them into weapons of self-destruction. The potion's mistress, her pride in her composure. The curse breakers, their image of unity. He finds the lie, or the insecurity, and rips it open. Alistair closed his eyes, remembering his own past, his own deep-seated cynicism. He'd always seen the flaws, the hypocrisy, the fragile illusions. He'd recoiled from them, retreated into himself. The Joker wasn't just a villain. He was a mirror, reflecting Alistair's darkest thoughts back at him, but with a maniacal grin. The difference was, Alistair had chosen to look away, to survive. The Joker wanted to force everyone to stare, to break. He wants to prove that order is a lie, Alistair said, his voice barely a whisper. That connection is weakness. That hope is foolish. Lyra looked at him intently. And you're starting to believe otherwise, aren't you? Alistair opened his eyes, met her gaze. I'm starting to see that his cynicism, while familiar, leads only to a gaping emptiness. And I'm realizing that simply pointing out the cracks isn't enough. Someone has to show there's something worth rebuilding, something worth fighting for, even with the cracks. The weight of this realization settled heavily on his shoulders. He felt a profound shift within him. The fear was still there, but now it was accompanied by a burgeoning sense of purpose, a quiet, defiant anger against the despair the Joker sought to spread. This was the finding resilience, part of his journey, not a sudden burst of courage, but a hardened resolve forged in the crucible of understanding. He sought out Professor Vance later that evening, finding her in her office, bathed in the warm glow of a softly humming enchanted lamp. The air smelled faintly of lemon and old parchment. He recounted their findings, the patterns of psychological torment, the way the Joker exploited vulnerability. Professor Vance listened patiently, her hands clasped on her desk. When Alistair finished, a faint smile touched her lips. You see it, then, Alistair. The Joker shows us our flaws, yes. He peels back the layers of pretense, exposing the insecurities we try to hide. But he conveniently leaves out the part where we choose to overcome them. He shows the dark, but not the defiant spark that pushes back against it. She leaned forward slightly. He believes that once the illusion of order is shattered, chaos is all that remains. But true resilience isn't about pretending the cracks don't exist. It's about acknowledging them, accepting them, and finding the strength to mend them, or to build something new and stronger in their place. It's about finding courage not in spite of our flaws, but often because of them. Alistair thought of his own childhood, his own bitter experiences. He'd seen the flaws, been hurt by them. He'd retreated. But now, seeing the Joker's methods laid bare, he understood that retreat was just another form of surrender. Vance's words resonated deep within him, touching the fledgling hope he was cultivating. So, how do we fight that, Professor? He asked, a new urgency in his voice. How do we fight a man who weaponizes despair? Vance's gaze was steady. You fight it with the very things he seeks to destroy. Genuine connection, unwavering belief in each other, and the quiet, defiant acts of courage that defy his nihilism. You fight it by demonstrating that humanity, for all its imperfections, is capable of finding light even in the deepest shadows. Returning to Lyra, Alistair felt a renewed sense of clarity. We can't just stop his magic, Lyra. We have to counter his message. We have to show people that his chaos isn't the only truth. Lyra, ever practical, had already begun to shift her focus. Right. If his attacks are always psychological, always designed to shatter trust or confidence, then our defense needs to be psychological too. Counter charms to mitigate public panic, perhaps. Spells that reinforce unity, rather than expose division. They began to brainstorm, Lyra listing various defensive spells and charms, while Alistair focused on the potential narrative, the counter-argument to the Joker's philosophy. This wasn't just about what they would do, but how it would be perceived. How could they restore belief in the face of such relentless disillusionment? Their work was interrupted by a new, insidious message. It wasn't broadcast on the Daily Prophet or yelled by an enchanted clown. It arrived as a single, ornate playing card, a joker, naturally, slipped under Alistair's dorm room door, accompanied by a faint, unnerving scent of circus peanuts and ozone. On the back, in sprawling, ink-black script, was a chilling verse. The old ways crumble, the new ways fright. A cherished tradition, extinguished by night. Hogwarts Grand Gala, a feast for all eyes. A final curtain for all your sweet lies. Alistair's blood ran cold. The annual Hogwarts Yule Ball. A bastion of tradition, joy, and unity. The Joker wasn't just targeting the Ministry or Diagon Alley. He was coming for Hogwarts itself, for its students, for their last vestige of childhood innocence. This wasn't just a confrontation. It was a psychological siege on the very heart of their world. The stage was set, and Alistair, no longer a cynical observer, knew he had to step into the spotlight, armed with nothing but a fragile, newfound hope. The Ministry of Magic's grand atrium pulsed with an unnatural silence. Not the respectful quiet of a formal address, but the heavy, suffocating stillness of a crowd held captive by dread. Thousands of eyes, belonging to witches, wizards, and ministry officials, were fixed on the central fountain, which had been transformed into the Joker's latest, most chilling stage. Instead of the gleaming golden statues depicting wizarding triumph, grotesque, grinning gargoyles now spewed sickly green liquid that fizzed and smoked, forming an acrid fog. Hovering above, suspended by an invisible force, was the Joker himself. His emerald green suit shimmered under manipulated light. His signature, impossibly wide grin stretched across his face, painted like a ghastly mask. He held no wand, only a single, blood-red rose that drooped dramatically in his hand. "Welcome, esteemed members of the wizarding world." His voice, amplified and distorted, echoed with a manic glee that grated on Alistair's nerves. "For too long, you've clung to the illusion of order, the comforting lie of control. But tonight, my friends, we peel back the final layer of your delusion." Alistair pushed through the petrified crowd, Lyra a steadfast shadow beside him. Minister Shacklebolt and Professor Vance stood near the front, their faces etched with grim determination. They had known Joker's target was the Ministry, but his audacity, his sheer theatricality, was still breathtaking. He planned to somehow, literally, dissolve the very foundations of their bureaucratic order. "Look at them, Alistair," Lyra whispered, her voice tight. "They're terrified. He's going to break them." She clutched a leather-bound journal, already strategizing for a magical counter. Alistair looked. He saw the same fear he'd known, the same cynical despair reflected in 1,000 pairs of eyes. He saw himself, just weeks ago. But something had changed. The fear was still there, a cold knot in his stomach, but it was no longer paralyzing. It was a fuel, a reminder of what he had to fight against. He stepped forward, pushing past the last few frozen onlookers, until he was in the direct line of sight of the Joker. "It's easy to break things, Joker." Alistair's voice, though not amplified, carried an unexpected clarity in the silence, cutting through the villain's echoing madness. "It's easy to tear down what others have built." The Joker paused, his unsettling grin twitching. His eyes, two pinpricks of dark amusement, found Alistair. Well. If it isn't our resident disillusioned prodigy. Come to witness the glorious collapse of all you despise, little Finch? Don't pretend you haven't dreamt of it. Alistair met his gaze, refusing to flinch. "I used to," he admitted, his voice steady. The admission hung in the air, shocking those who knew him, unsettling even the Joker. "I saw the flaws, the hypocrisy, the sheer vulnerability of it all. And you, Joker, you showed me how easy it was to exploit those cracks." Alistair took another step forward. Lyra grabbed his arm, her eyes wide with concern, but he gently shook her off. This was his path, one he had to walk alone. But you also showed me something else, Alistair continued, his voice gaining momentum, resonating with a quiet power. You showed me that you offer nothing. You tear down, but you don't build. You expose, but you don't heal. You preach chaos, but you don't understand connection. The Joker's smile didn't falter, but a subtle irritation flickered in his eyes. Oh, the boy has found his moral compass. How quaint. And what, pray tell, is this connection you speak of? The illusion of shared purpose in a world where everyone only looks out for themselves. He swept his hand over the cowering crowd. Look at them, Finch. Pathetic, terrified, desperate for someone else to save them. They're afraid, yes, Alistair conceded, looking over his shoulder at the faces around him, his gaze lingering on Professor Vance, whose gentle, knowing smile was a steady anchor. And that's real. It's human. But fear isn't the only real thing. And it's not the only truth. He turned back to the Joker, his gaze unwavering. Your philosophy is hollow, Joker. You think by exposing pain and suffering, you're revealing a grand truth. But you're just reflecting back the worst parts of yourself onto the world. You've become so obsessed with the idea that everything is a joke, you've forgotten how to truly laugh. How to truly live. The Joker let out a peal of deranged laughter, a sound designed to curdle blood. Oh, I live, little bird. I live to tear down your pretty little lies. No, Alistair said, his voice firm, you live to avoid genuine connection, because it terrifies you more than any truth you pretend to uncover. You're not a liberator, you're a coward, hiding behind theatrics and destruction because you're too afraid to simply be. The red rose in the Joker's hand burst into black ash, scattering like morbid confetti. His smile finally faltered, replaced by a snarl that twisted his painted face into something truly monstrous. You think you understand me, boy? You think you can dissect the magnificent chaos I unleash? I understand despair, Alistair retorted, his voice low and intense. I understand what it feels like to believe the world is broken beyond repair. I've lived it. But what you refuse to see, what you actively try to extinguish, is that even in the face of all that brokenness, there are people who still choose to mend. Who still choose to hope. Not with blind optimism, but with deliberate, quiet acts of defiance. He looked at the crowd again, his voice rising, carrying conviction. He wants you to believe that there's nothing left but chaos, that your traditions, your beliefs, your very connections are meaningless. But that's his lie. Our strength isn't in avoiding pain. It's in facing it together. It's in helping each other up when we fall. It's in the everyday magic of kindness, of resilience, of refusing to let despair win. He pointed a finger, not at the Joker, but at the grotesque fountain. He makes a mockery of our institutions, but he can't make a mockery of our courage. He can twist our symbols, but he can't twist our spirit. He can't force you to give up, unless you choose to. A murmur rippled through the crowd. For the first time, people weren't just staring at the Joker in fear. They were looking at Alistair, at each other. A few brave souls exchanged glances, a spark of understanding passing between them. The Joker's eyes blazed with a manic fury. Enough of this sentimental drivel. Let's see how much spirit you have when your entire foundation crumbles. He raised his hands, and the green liquid in the fountain began to churn violently, rising into a malevolent, smoking vortex. A chilling cackle tore from his throat. Your ministry, your order, your very civilization will melt away into glorious, beautiful anarchy. Just as the green liquid began to spread beyond the fountain, threatening to engulf the atrium floor, Alistair acted. He didn't cast a powerful spell. He did something far more fundamental. He extended his wand and focused on the simple, steadfast magic of protection. Not a shield, but a calming charm, a call for unity. Lyra, now, he shouted. Lyra, who had been studying his every move, sprang into action. With a sharp flick of her wand, she conjured a shimmering, opaque barrier around the fountain, containing the spreading chaos. It wasn't perfect. The barrier hissed and steamed under the corrosive liquid, but it held. Other witches and wizards, inspired by Alistair's defiance and Lyra's quick thinking, slowly began to join in, adding their own protective charms, their wands pointed at the fountain. Ministry officials, initially stunned, found their resolve. Aurors, who had been hesitant to engage with the Joker directly due to his unpredictable nature, began to coordinate. The Joker watched, his painted grin cracking. The green liquid, instead of flooding the atrium, was now contained within a growing, collective magical dome. He had prepared for a direct magical confrontation, for a defiant assault, but not for this quiet, unified resistance. Not for this sudden, unyielding refusal to succumb to his despair. No. No, no, no. The Joker shrieked, his voice losing its amplified resonance, becoming raw and desperate. You cling to your pathetic illusions. You're all just sheep. We're more than that, Alistair said, his voice now strong, unwavering. We're people who choose to believe in something beyond your cynicism. We choose hope, not as an illusion, but as an act of will. As more wands joined the collective barrier, solidifying it, the Joker let out a guttural roar of frustration. His plan, his magnificent final act of psychological dissolution, was failing. It wasn't being defeated by force, but by a quiet, determined rejection of his very premise. The magic, rather than breaking the spirit, was now rebuilding it, piece by piece, spell by spell. With a final, furious snarl, the Joker vanished in a flash of sickly green smoke, leaving behind only the acrid smell of ozone and the dying hiss of the contained chaos. He didn't retreat. He simply disappeared, unwilling to witness the triumph of what he despised. The atrium erupted in a collective gasp, then a wave of shaky relief. The green liquid in the fountain began to recede, the gargoyles losing their grotesque grins, slowly transforming back into the familiar golden statues. The unnatural silence had been broken, replaced by murmurs of shock, relief, and a nascent, unfamiliar sense of unity. Alistair stood there, his wand still raised, his heart pounding. He felt utterly drained, but also light. He hadn't defeated the Joker with a powerful curse, but he had disarmed his philosophy. He had, perhaps, shown people a different way to fight. Professor Vance approached him, her eyes shining with pride. You did it, Alistair, she whispered, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. You found your voice. You found your purpose. Lyra, too, was beside him, her practical mind already assessing the damage. The containment held, she stated, but her gaze at Alistair held an uncharacteristic warmth. Your theory about collective will, it worked. Alistair looked around at the slowly reawakening atrium. People were looking at him differently now. Not with fear or even simple gratitude, but with something akin to understanding. He had stood in the gaping maw of despair and had offered, not platitudes, but a hard-won, genuine hope. But even as the immediate threat receded, a chill ran down Alistair's spine. The Joker was gone, but not captured. His final, desperate roar echoed in Alistair's mind, a promise of a return. You cling to your pathetic illusions. The words felt less like an insult and more like a challenge. The wizarding world had been saved from this particular Joker Gambit, but Alistair knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his bones, that this was far from over. The Joker would return, perhaps with a new game, a new twisted joke. And Alistair, the boy who once only wanted to survive, now knew he would have to be ready to stand against him, again and again, for as long as it took to truly prove that genuine hope was not an illusion, but the most powerful magic of all. His journey had just begun.